Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. In 2006, a gentleman whom you might know, Lord Nicholas Stern, who was then Treasury Secretary, he is now, I believe, the Vice Chair at the Grantham Institute. He made three key points. Note that this was in 2006. He talked in his review of the economics of climate change. The three major points that are evident from that excellent review was that every country and every individual in our world will be affected by climate change, but the poorest will suffer earliest and the most. The second was that climate change is the greatest market failure of all time. The third was that the benefits of early action far outweigh the costs, and he estimated at that time that inaction could cost the world at least 5% of GDP each year, whilst the cost of action, reducing emissions, could be limited to around 1% of global GDP. Now today, just 12 years later, wildfires are burning in the Arctic Circle. The fires across Siberia in the past few weeks have covered 38,000 square miles. The smoke from those fires is evident even over Canada. In Sweden, I think in the last year they had 3 forest fires. This year they have 40 times that. And I'm only referring to the large fires. I believe the definition is more than 40 or 50 hectares in each instance. So they are 40 times larger than the annual average of the last 10 years. The headline in the weekend issue of the Asian edition of the UK's Financial Times, it really puts a lot of things into focus along with the picture. If you have an opportunity, please Google it and have a look. It explains the defining influence of climate change in these incidents and in talking about the 40% increase in large-scale fires across Europe. And the article is entitled Scorched Earth, Why the World is on Fire. The Financial Times is traditionally a very conservative news organization and very fact and science-based. Now, a decade ago, there were environmentalists who fought for acknowledgement and action on this climate reality. And then on the other side, there were state and business lobbies that sometimes responded, but mostly did not. The reasons for the lack of response were mostly economic. Adapting is thought not to be good for business. And it seems still to be, in spite of all of this, it seems still to be the perception because the world is today burning more fossil fuels every year, and apart from other consequences, also killing millions from air pollution. To understand the business case for this, I found an interesting article in the scientific journal Nature, which many of you might have read. It revised last year its estimated cost of climate change, now focusing primarily on the impact of methane gas in the Arctic and the heat stress, flooding, drought, storms it can create. Its estimate is of a $60 trillion cost. A $60 trillion cost in context of a $70 trillion global economy. There's no real business case for climate denial, however much one might try to ignore the reality. The US is not alone in this belief and continues to invest, I think, $20 billion in 2016 in production, in subsidies for the production of fossil fuels, $15 billion more, but the fact is that there are many others beyond this US example. So human existence is very clearly, intricately and irrevocably linked to our natural environment. And ultimately, I think that when you look at the past, there were environmentalists, there was government, and there was business. But today, by necessity, we are all environmentalists. So our focus today, ladies and gentlemen, is on the future. We have horror stories from the past, but we don't want to dwell on those because there are grounds for guarded optimism. The increase in development and adoption of sustainable technologies, of climate-smart agriculture, of knowledge on how we might adapt to this new reality in our world has been unprecedented, exponential in the past decade. It's evident today that there is far greater potential and opportunity in climate-smart agriculture, production, lifestyles, than in holding on to the past. It's evident to most of us. At the front line of this new crisis, though, underlining the urgency that we are sharing today, is food security. Again, reading through the media in the past few months alone, farmers from Australia to England are struggling to cope, and the impact on food production is a part of a new reality. The consequences of the late spring in the UK has been devastating to food, impacting on the cost of everything from vegetables to meat and, interestingly, beer, which has probably caused the most alarm, but it creates a very serious situation for us in terms of what next. So I think taking that into the Sri Lankan context, when you look at the paddy farmers in Mbilipitia, in Hambantota, whether you look at buffalo herders, others in Sri Lanka, adaptation to climate change is both a necessity and an opportunity, because they are wondering where the water is going to come from for the next harvest. They are wondering how they're going to add value to the buffalo milk they produce. So innovation has the answer, adaptation has the answer, greater productivity, and a whole host of issues that we will look at. So it's no different, therefore, for these individuals as it is at a national scale, because poverty alleviation, the rural economy, future cities, health, gender imbalance, food, energy, water security, they're all different dimensions of this one central phenomenon, climate change. And failure to address it is only going to exacerbate inequalities, and as we all know, inequality is a corrosive, debilitating social ill which leads ultimately to instability and far worse consequences. So I think that suffices for an introduction, because we have some very educated speakers with tremendous insight into some of the themes that I have just touched on. I'm really grateful to these eminent speakers who are not only speaking theory, but in most cases are also practitioners who have real-world experience to share with us. I'm really grateful for them, for their time in joining us today. I'm grateful to UNGC, to Biodiversity Sri Lanka, to Citra Lab, the panelists, and to the audience, because while we look today at the threats and the opportunities in a changing climate, our focus is on the response. You have all heard the terrible data about what could be, but there is, as Lord Stern also mentioned recently, a case for some optimism. And that's what we want to focus on, because with this event, we hope to engage youth, engage government, business, academia, and individuals at every level to embrace, to understand the climate reality, to build momentum for a sustained and informed response. So amongst us, we have representatives of business, of academia, we have students, we have members of ministries of Sri Lanka. And we will conclude this session whilst we are taking refreshments. You all have the opportunity of joining with a lab, because this session is about what happens next. And so in that lab, we're going to ask the question, so what? Did we spend a nice afternoon followed by some refreshments, or are we going to achieve something definite? This, for us, speaking as Dilmah Conservation and UNGC, is a 3-year engagement that has the objective of delivering an outcome, a tangible outcome. And we will report periodically what those outcomes might be. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for your presence, and I would like to invite you to participate in this session, because it is one that is of vital importance. Thank you very much